All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Brittany Quickwarner. I'm the President and CEO at the Eugene Chamber. Thank you for joining us. This is our Committed to Community webinar series that we've been hosting since mid-March. It's been a while. It seems crazy that we've been in this scenario for almost 3 months now. I'm excited to be joined today by Kari Westlund, who's the Executive Director of Travel Lane County, and Cathryn Stevens of the Eugene Airport. We're going to talk about travel, hospitality industry, and the impacts that the coronavirus has had in both of those worlds. So these women are leaders in their industry, and I know have a lot of insights for us. We want to make sure that you guys have a chance to ask questions. So if you're on the Zoom call, you can type them into the chat, and we'll make sure to circle around to those. If you are watching us on Facebook Live, go ahead and leave your questions in the comments, and we will make sure to get those over to our speakers in the Zoom chat. So I'm going to let each of them kind of kick it off and introduce themselves, and then if you want to just talk kind of generally about, what your role has been during this time and what you've seen happening and kind of the current state of where we're at. And then we can turn it into question and answer and discussion a little bit after that. So Cathryn, I think I'll let you go first.
Okay, sounds good. So I'm Katherine Stevens. I'm the acting airport director at the Eugene Airport. And this has been definitely a wild ride out here for us. While a lot of folks have been staying at home, all of our workers out here are essential workers. And so especially for our management team out here, we've really been working some pretty long hours to address the needs of our airlines, our tenant partners, all kinds of different aspects of how we're surviving through this, and then also putting things in place so that as people are able to start traveling again, that we're going to be ready for them. So Brittany, did you want me to go through my slides right now, or do you want me to hang on? Or
I'll let Kari introduce herself, and then we'll jump back over to you to your slides.
Sounds good.
Hi everybody, I'm Kari Westlund. I'm the CEO of Travel Lane County. And as we were coming into March, we were on track for our 10th record year in travel and tourism. And we were looking forward to the opening of Hayward Field, and likely would have had all-time record months right now in May and June. And things kind of slid to a halt in the middle of March, and we've taken a phased approach to our work. And when we come back into my section, I'll just kind of walk you through quickly what we've been up to over the last couple months and where we see things going.
Great. All right, Cathryn, you want to share your screen and talk a little bit about the airport?
I will do that. And there we go.
All right.
Okay. So as Kari said, we were really on track for our 10th record year when we first went into all of this. So there's some disappointment there that, we're not seeing the record months that we would have had with passenger traffic coming in for some of the really major events that we were looking forward to. So here's how it looked for us when we first kind of got into the reality that something was going to be changing in our life. It was towards kind of the end of February. And then as you can see, we hit about, for us, the day is March 14th, when really we started to see things change drastically. We bottomed out at 95% down, fewer passengers than we would normally see. And we held there for about a month. And then 3 weeks ago, we were only down 90%. And then this past week, or 2 weeks ago, 85%. And then this past week, we've held at 80% down. So we're seeing 20% of the passengers we would normally see. And as you can see, in May, we've started to see little increases in passengers, even without having Lane County into phase 2 of reopening, which allows for non-essential travel. So just a snapshot for our April activity report kind of tells the story again with being down 95%. So year to date now, we're down 29% as the end of April. And then you can just kind of take a look at what it's done to our airlines as well. They've just drastically slashed flights, and it's really been hard to track because a lot of times they were slashing, canceling flights at the last minute. So they were in the schedule, but they weren't flying them. So one thing we're doing now is a weekly tracking of what the airline schedules in the system show, so that we can kind of keep an eye on what is coming our way. Although I would say the airlines can also still cancel any of these flights at any time. So it's still very hard to predict. But you can see for May, we have a reduction in departures by 61%, and that correlates to a reduction in seats by 62%. Moving into June, it looks slightly better, and that's probably accurate. We've heard from a couple of airlines that are actually adding back some flights. And in July, I would say this just means that the airlines haven't adjusted yet, because it only is showing about 5% down in departures. But there probably will be additional changes made to that unless we have a miraculous recovery. And then the other thing is the airlines, in receiving the CARES Act funding that they received, it came with some strings that they must serve most of the communities that they had served before. It's been kind of watered down a bit over the past couple of weeks with the FAA and the Department of Transportation allowing airlines to not quite serve quite as many markets as they were planning. But the example for us, we're retaining all of our airlines and all of our routes technically. But what is happening is that for LAX as the example, we had 3 airlines serving LAX. 2 of them will now not be serving LAX and 1 will remain. Although we look out into July and we see that both American and United are adding LAX back, at least at this point. So those are the kinds of things that we're tracking closely. So as far as things that we've done at the airport to be ready, because we remained open the entire time, we really worked on what we could do. So we did a top to bottom clean of our terminal building. We swept our parking lot and restriped it. We did some re-lamping in our terminal building, things that are really hard to do when they're full of people. So just things that we have on hand and will carry through for probably the next 24 months at least, is making sure we always have a supply of cleaning materials on hand. Personal protective equipment for staff. At this time, the city of Eugene is not requiring staff to wear masks, although I would tell you that the majority of our terminal building staff are choosing to wear masks at work. And the airlines are also requiring anyone on the aircraft to wear masks. We know that PDX has chosen to require masks for everyone in their terminal building, and that they're not allowing guests into their terminal building, only ticketed passengers. So we haven't taken those steps yet. We also don't necessarily at this point have challenges around social distancing, but we may need to make some adjustments as we move forward, depending on how busy we do get. So as you can see, we have a pretty robust cleaning protocol that follows the CDC guidelines, and we do that multiple times a day. As far as our employee health, we make sure that we're following those CDC guidelines as well, with hand washing, staying home if you're not feeling well, all of those kinds of things. We posted some signage out. We're getting We're Ready campaign going, and I know we're going to be partnering with Travel Lane County on one of their great videos that you'll see later in this webinar. And then we have put a few other things in place. So we've got plexiglass shields in front of all of our customer-facing ticket counters. We have little green dots on the floor just as a reminder of keeping that 6-foot distance. And those are anywhere where we feel like lines could form, but we can always add more of those if we need to. And then as of June, I think it's June 4th, actually, if Lane County moves into, passes the gating criteria and then moves into phase 2, that triggers the allowing non-essential travel to resume. So the message is we are ready. It's thanks to our team at the Eugene Terminal Building for making sure we we've got all of those measures in place and we're ready to go. And we are nimble and flexible and ready to make additional changes as needed. So there you go.
Thanks, Catherine. I appreciate that. Kari, what do you think? Do you want to go? Do you have a presentation you want to give, and then we can circle the questions? Oh,
Microphone.
Okay, so just in brief, the 2019 economic impact numbers came out a few weeks ago, and just so people are kind of aware, a little overview of this sector. The overall travel and tourism industry in Lane County is a $1 billion industry, and it marked $1 billion in direct spending for the second year in a row in 2019, with a job count of 11,040 people in the county employed in the sector. So it is a very significant industry sector, particularly when it's healthy. And I think we're all very, very kind of hyper aware that it has been really heavily hit by this pandemic. So just in brief, Travel Lane County's revenues come from hotel taxes that are paid from visitors who are traveling into the area. So as an organization, we had some due diligence to do in terms of looking after the organization. It looks like we're going to be okay, and we've got our staff team on, and we've actually been remarkably busy during this time. So while we haven't been actively encouraging people to come into the county, and we've been really honoring the guidelines and protocols issued out of the governor's office, we have worked on several rounds of content. During what we're calling the wait phase, which was pre-phase 1, we worked on some content that might be familiar to some of the people who are tuned in. One is the Zoom background that's right behind me. We have a whole series of Zoom backgrounds. We did some video work around hashtag Love Lane County. We have a lot of social media tiles that our businesses can use that indicate if they're open for delivery or curbside service. All of that content is available to anyone who would like to access it at our website, which is eugenecascadescoast.org/Love Lane. And if you go into our site, you can download Zoom backgrounds or access the video content. As we got closer to phase 1, we started talking to some of the rural communities in Lane County, because of course we market all of Lane County as Eugene, Cascades, and Coast, and are responsible for helping drive overnight demand at hotels throughout the entire county. And we started to notice that beyond what we've been talking about internally in terms of traveler confidence and the mitigation we might have to do coming out of the pandemic to coax people back into travel and into our part of the world, we started to recognize that some of our communities and our residents were really fearful as well of people coming into the area. And I think we're all recognizing that there's a certain amount of stress that we've all experienced during this pandemic, and it kind of runs across a continuum. And so we had some work to do around a variety of audiences to bring people back to the middle and kind of help regain some perspective. So we've been all in and honoring the governor's protocols, mitigating risk, encouraging businesses to mitigate risk, encouraging residents and travelers to take care. And at the same time, we want people to kind of start moving again and help prime the pump for our area businesses and the people that we actually work for, which are hospitality sector businesses in our communities, so that we can get back to full health as soon as possible. And to that end, I'm going to just show a couple of quick videos. One is running as a PSA right now. And I need to make sure I'm sharing out my audio here, because I have learned. So I'm going to just play this for you real quickly.
Our local businesses are preparing to welcome you back to the places we all love, to ensure residents and visitors are safe to explore our towns and trails. Hotels and restaurants are finding creative new ways to serve our communities, innovating to bring you the familiar service and experiences that feed the soul. They are carefully preparing for your return so that it's safe to welcome visitors again. We can't wait to see you.
That 30-second spot, that was 30 seconds, is running as a PSA on a number of area stations. And then we have 2 longer segments. Can you see a screen with a suitcase in it?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
You have to change with the times. The hotel industry is used to change. All hotels across the hospitality community are following state, local, and federal guidelines. And we adapt, we overcome, and we change. Our housekeeping staff is the backbone of what we do. We've not only been training, but retrained on how to sanitize a room. It's a 3-step process. The last thing they do is they leave, they re-sanitize what they just cleaned. So it's really enhanced cleaning, deep cleaning procedures of all of our sleeping rooms. Some of the challenges we have overcome is the social distancing, the 6-foot markers that we've implemented at check-in and during our grab-and-go breakfast. I can speak for the hospitality industry and my staff that we're very much looking forward to having our guests return to the area.
One of the things we're seeing in consumer sentiment research is that people are anxious to start traveling again, but they are also doing research on destinations to see what kind of mitigation measures are in place. So I'm going to just play this last video and then we can stop screen share and continue to chat.
Pretty much the whole name of the game right now is overcome and adapt and make changes as best you can to make sure everyone's safe and happy. We've gotten some great feedback from our guests as far as the changes we've made. Our menu isn't the same as it was. You know, we are a steakhouse and we've made some drastic changes to our menu to make it travel well. We've been communicating a lot of our changes primarily through our social media platforms. You know, we have hand sanitizer out at the window when we hand them food. Every credit card slip that we get, we send them with a little sandy towels to wipe down their card and the pen, and they've been really appreciative of the measures we've taken to, you know, look out for their safety and ours as well. We understand that people's time is precious right now, be it taking care of their kids or working more or not working or just the general stresses of what's going on. And we feel really good about being able to take care of a meal for them and take one of those stresses off their plate. Things have been challenging for sure, but we're believing it's a little bit of forged by fire and we're going to come out stronger and better in the end. And we're really looking forward to getting our guests back in here and having that connection that we had with them before.
Word to the wise, if you come to work for Travel Lane County, you're going to end up in a video at some point.
Those are really great videos, Kari.
Yeah.
I mean, kudos to you and your staff. Those are just awesome.
The goals of the campaign really are to meet those sentiments that we just talked about, both in terms of resident sentiment, but traveler sentiment, and also helping our businesses recognize that they really do need to get those mitigation measures in place so that there's a sort of consistent feeling for customers as they're going from one business to another, and they're seeing that the businesses are kind of leaning in to help mitigate risk and make sure that everyone's as safe as possible. As we head towards phase 2, we do want to do some work with Cathryn and the Eugene Airport as we start to see air travel pace pick up. Right now, what we're seeing, when you look at the western part of the US and you look at website analytics, you can see that drive market traffic to DMO websites in the West is starting to pick up. People are starting to plan, they're looking ahead, they're watching these phases, they want to get back out and travel, they want to go to uncongested areas, and they want to be safe while they're doing it. So our team is really rolling out our work in phases to meet the market where it is and meet our business community where it is in terms of being ready to go. We've had close to a third of our rooms go dark during the pandemic, and now people are kind of setting their reopening dates and getting ready to meet the marketplace where it is. Probably the biggest unknown for us remains the the governor's instructions around mass gatherings. So when you think about travel and tourism, we have a lot of market demand that's triggered by mass gatherings, whether it's fall football or other sporting events, or it's conventions that are taking place in our conference hotels, or it's festivals that drive a lot of traffic for us during this time of year. We just have a lot of demand tied to people's ability to come together. So finding safe ways to do that, working with the state on getting protocols in place that allow activity to start back up is going to be really important for us to grow as quickly as we can. Right now, the national estimates are it could be as much as 4 years to get back to full normal in terms of revenue, particularly for the hotel sector, because you have several variables that you're tracking. You've got travel demand, how many people want to come in. You've got the rate that the hotels can charge for those rooms, and that all has to come together to get back to where we were at those record levels. And it could be a while. It could be a while before we can do that, particularly depending on what the guidelines around mass gatherings are.
Kari, on the line of hotels, did most of our hotels stay open during this time? Were there, hotels that closed that are starting to open back up? What's kind of your read on the hotel capacity right now and who's doing what to try and improve that?
Yeah, we were down about a third of our rooms closed. We have had some hotels reopen. Driftwood Shores is a good example of that over at the coast. They went dark. They were reopened on the 15th of May. They ran pretty full this last weekend and did a good weekend business. And then we've got hotels in the metro area that have gone dark. I know Jason's on from The Graduate. The Graduate has been dark. We're looking forward to, because that hotel is one that really needs mass gathering ability to leverage the Eugene Conference Center. We're watching those guidelines closely. I know Merite Hotels had a couple hotels go dark. They've got one scheduled to open in just a few days and another one to reopen in a month. So it really is a continuum, Brittany, in terms of people are watching how much product they have themselves in control in the market. They're concentrating activity when it makes sense to do so rather than keep their full supply open. So it really varies by company.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like Cedric said even hotels remained open through this. Jody says, did I hear correctly? It might take 4 years for hotels to reach full capacity again or full demand.
From a national perspective, it's a 4-year climb, and some of the major metro areas, even Portland, is going to have some hotels stay dark for as much as a year. So those companies that own multiple properties in a major metro area may not open all of their rooms again. I'm feeling a little more confident about our market. We tend never to get, we don't get to the highest of the highs, and we don't necessarily get to the lowest of the lows. This feels pretty low, I know, but I feel like we tend to bump around in the middle. And so a lot of it depends on the University of Oregon. We all know that's a major driver of demand, and collegiate sports and youth sports.
Yeah.
So we'll see how those things come together.
Kari, have you talked to folks about how the tourism industry might pivot if we aren't able to host the football games this fall and some of the large events?
Well, we're going to work that drive market really hard. We have a very loyal, long-standing drive market. The national research is showing traveler sentiment feeling pretty good about drive ranges up to around 500 miles. We have a solid 300-mile drive market that we'll go back to and coax them back. They know our area. They feel confidence in our area. We are uncongested from metro to rural. A very safe feeling market. And the more stories we can tell around our mitigation, we're very healthy. Lane County is so lucky. We have a 0.00018. That's our percentage. 0.0018 is less than 18 people out of every 100,000 people who live here have become ill and are in the metrics. And so if we can maintain that and stay healthy,
Yeah.
then we're going to be an attractive destination for people to come to, because we feel very safe.
Yeah. Catherine, can you, kind of going back to the travel component, someone asked what qualifies as non-essential versus essential travel?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And I don't know that it's actually been defined either by the governor's staff or in industry-wide. I would say if you key on that word essential, so essential workers are those who have been deemed should still report to work. So medical workers, public works workers, airport workers, military folks. So kind of the folks that we saw flying when we were really flat, really like 95% down, those are folks that were traveling to work for the military, medical workers, that kind of thing. And so I think technically that's what essential travel is supposed to be. Non-essential would then be everything else.
Okay.
And then of course it's, kind of some judgment calls. I mean, if you think about it, life doesn't stop. People still have family emergencies. They need to go be with loved ones when they have, some kind of family situation. And I know some people have had to make some hard choices around that because, for them, that's essential travel.
Right. Amanda asks, is there a concerted effort between Eugene Airport and Traveling County to communicate and be up to date with other cities, states, counties in regards to where it's safe to travel and who all's allowing visitors? Is it fly anywhere you want to when phase 2 opens, or are there spaces or places that you really shouldn't be leaving the Eugene Airport to go to? How are folks gonna learn more about that?
Well, from an air travel standpoint, it's really tough because the Federal Aviation Administration regulates airports and airlines. So other than putting in some, health protocols recommended by Lane County Health, we were really regulated by the FAA. So we've asked the FAA as an industry, please come out with standards that will be the same at every airport. That hasn't happened yet. That would be really helpful if, as a person travels from one airport to the next, that every protocol is the same so they know what to expect. But that just hasn't happened yet. So we're hopeful that we will have something like that in place soon.
And we haven't had a ban on domestic travel. We don't have some markets that are open and some markets that are closed. As Americans, we really have the opportunity to travel, and there is a lot of responsibility that each of us bears for mitigating risks for ourselves. And so we do want to honor the guidelines. We want people to be cautious and take good care. And we do have a sense that travelers are doing their homework. They are kind of anxious to get moving, but they are discerning about where they are getting moving to. And so the airport mitigation protocols will be important for us as residents. As people are coming in, we're gonna take comfort in knowing that airports have some mitigation measures in place, but we also do want to get the pump primed. We want to see business start moving again, and we have large sectors of our economy that are dependent on travel, and so we're trying to thread that needle. We're trying to get people moving, but get them moving safely.
Yeah, Catherine, I want to talk a little bit about the financial impact that this has had on the Eugene Airport. And you might just kind of help folks understand how the finances work. The Eugene Airport is actually a department of the city of Eugene. It's not its own kind of private, like in Portland, they have their Port of Portland, which controls their airport. It's a part of the city. And so can you talk a little bit about the budget and how the airport kind of runs and how this is impacted and what you guys have been able to do to stay whole?
Sure. Well, certainly when we were headed into this and we reached that 95% down, it was really very stressful because the vast majority of our funding comes from airline and passenger activity. And so we are what's called an enterprise fund in the city of Eugene. We don't hit the general fund at all. In fact, we buy back services from the city based on the revenue that's generated at the airport. And all the revenue generated at the airport needs to stay at the airport other than the services that we buy back. So thankfully, Congress and especially our local congressional delegation, Senator Wyden, Senator Merkley, and Congressman DeFazio really stepped up to help build that CARES Act funding for airports. And so in pretty short amount of time, we knew that we would be receiving a $22.7 million grant that we can spend on anything that's legal to spend airport revenue on. So we are operating budget per year is almost 13 million. Our capital budget is about 13 million a year. So we know that we will be fine through this fiscal year. We'll be fine all the way through the next fiscal year. Beyond that, we are going to need some additional help from Congress if we haven't really reached a pretty good level of recovery. And then the other piece is we have capital projects that are all scheduled out and with federal funding that are attached to them and already programmed. We didn't want to lose that. Usually those come with matching funds that we need to provide, and they're often funded through passenger facility charges, but with 95% fewer passengers, that, that was going to be a real issue. So this summer's project is funded 100% now through the FAA. We're hopeful that that will also extend to maybe the next 2 or 3 years worth of capital projects as well, which would keep us whole. I think for us right now, the real challenge is our airlines and tenants that are struggling and how we can potentially help them. We're a little bit limited in what we can do, but we have deferred some minimum annual guarantee payments. Our airlines, we essentially waive some of the fees that we would normally charge them, just so we can stay competitive in the market. That's a practice that we've done for years, but now it's more important than ever. And we continually, pretty much daily kind of take a look at that to see what it is that we're going to need to be able to take action on so that they stay viable, because when we do see our passenger traffic return, we need those supporting businesses to be viable as well.
Yeah, so, from the Chamber's perspective, air travel's been a big priority for us. For decades, we've helped for longer. I mean, the Eugene Chamber helped originally get the airport in Eugene. And so it's, our entire history has been supportive of the airport. And we were on a pretty good trajectory here before this happened, as far as the growth of not only the airlines, but, master planning future terminals. For a community our size, we are really lucky to have the airport that we have in the leadership in Cathryn as well. Cathryn, I know that you serve on, committees nationally as well. I'm curious, what are some of the bigger picture kind of national conversations around air travel and how this is impacting, the industry on a larger scale than just Eugene?
Sure. So definitely a lot of, regulatory issues right now, and things that we could have never predicted, right? Which is probably what everybody's dealing with right now, is how do you deal with, a 90% drop in your business, and that may be a lengthy recovery. And so these are all issues that we talk about on daily conference calls pretty much. Yeah. And we're all seeing the same types of things. We're all seeing big asks from our concessionaire partners and our car rental agencies and our airlines, and not having the ability within our contracts and our operating agreements to be able to just easily deal with those things. And so I think what we'll see coming out of this is just some real big changes in how we contract things. An example would be our parking services contract, which, they were enjoying high passenger numbers as well. And then when that fell off, the balance tipped almost immediately, where we were paying for a service that we had no contractual ability to change, even though we had a drastic reduction in passengers. So it's those types of things structurally that we're going to be needing to address moving into the future.
Yeah. Someone asked when international travel might come back.
That's a great question. We already saw restrictions again this week to, I want to say,
Brazil.
Yeah. Brazil. So I think it will probably look similar to how we're opening up in the States. So if there are countries that have proven that they have, flattened their curve and it's under control, and we may see travel beginning to start up between the US and those countries. But whether it will just open wide up again right away, I kind of doubt that.
Yeah.
I think from an operator perspective, so vaccine is going to be critical. And a global participation in a vaccine, but also when you think about the structure of international travel, particularly inbound travel, which is what I'm focused on, you have a pretty complex structure of retail and wholesale channels that people coming to the US are buying their travel to the US through. And there's been major disruption in those channels, of course, and a lot of companies no longer in business. And it's going to take some time to put all those pieces back together again too. So we're hearing 18 to 24 months before you really even start to see significant inbound traffic start back up again.
I'm curious if either one of you know kind of the statistics here, but travel to our area, business related versus tourism related. And is there an emphasis on one or the other that we should be thinking about, as we're trying to adapt to not having as much tourism? Is there a business related travel that we can be, helping and supporting in some way?
One of the things we're really lucky to have in Lane County is a very diverse economy, really. I've lived in markets where tourism is number one, and I can tell you that I'm eternally grateful for the complexity and diversity of the local economic fabric. So business travel is an important component of the traffic that's taking place here. And I think that we are going to see business traffic come back. Those individual business travelers are going to come back more readily than some of the group-based business travel, which would be more around conferences and symposiums and those kinds of things. I did see a question in the chat bar around athletics, and I just want to make the point that Autzen Stadium is the single largest venue in the state of Oregon at close to 60,000 people in terms of its capacity, and every home football game has meant very close to $6 million in visitor spending and another almost $2 million in resident spending. Very, very important component of the economy. So it isn't just about being a passionate football fan and going to your tailgate. Yeah. It's about a major injection into our economy. And if we are dark for the entire football season, and that starts to impact other sporting events as well, it's a significant blow to the hospitality industry, and not just hotels, but 40% of visitor spending is on food and beverage. So our restaurant community, our tasting rooms, our wineries, our restaurants, our food and beverage stores are also very, very focused on how to get a healthy level of travel activity back into the economy. And we do expect independent leisure travelers to lead that effort. And so that's that importance of that drive market. Business travel is another important component. Probably 30% of our business is group-based in some way. So it is a pretty significant component. When you're talking about 30% of anything, that's a big number. That's beyond profit margin in most cases. So it's significant.
Yeah, I would just echo what Kari says. We're really fortunate that we do have that diverse economy around travel and tourism with, and business. And so we track that every year through a survey. And we know we used to kind of run about 50-50, 50% business, 50% leisure. But it's tracked a little more leisure over the past few years, really only because I think we have just seen this huge inertia with the tourism business. So you have to give Kari a lot of credit there, just the sporting events and that kind of thing. So we may see that balance kind of return back to more of a 50-50 kind of situation. We'll just have to see. But because we are so diverse with, sports, but also the universities and their academics, there's some travel around that, and the research. There's a lot of research dollars that come into our community. That also has travel attached to it. And then a lot of the tech businesses that we've seen either start up here, either on their own or out of the universities, or moved up from the Bay Area to either have a satellite office or completely relocate. All of those things play into that travel economy.
Yeah.
It is, we do have some bright spots to look forward to. The night campus is certainly going to be a significant addition to the community. Hayward Field is incredible. So I know as I was planning out over the future fiscal year 21, we're going to move that big bubble we thought we'd have right now. It's going to happen a year from now, but it is coming, and it will be really, really helpful to us as we get Hayward hosting those major events.
Yeah, I was going to make a similar point, Kari, that I think our community, while we have, unique challenges, we also have unique opportunities that, we were hoping to be just an economic boost, but now it could really aid in our economic recovery. And I think that that's something that we should not take for granted. I think that, sometimes trying to find the silver lining, a blessing in disguise, if you will, postponing 2021 instead of canceling it altogether, I think is a huge blessing for our community. Give us a little bit more time to recover and hopefully get people more comfortable with traveling and going out again. So I think that's definitely a good point to make, that we could be without those things, and we could be, deciding how and trying to figure out how to recover from that. Catherine, what about U of O students? Or Kari, same, if campus looks different in the fall, fewer students or students, being more remote, I mean, what are some of your thoughts around how that would impact travel?
Yeah, I mean, it would definitely be interesting. What we usually see is international students come in and then they just stay and they don't necessarily go home on breaks and that kind of thing. So I know the universities are very concerned about not having their international students coming, but for us, from just a passenger number standpoint, yes, it will have an impact, but that alone will not be devastating. I think what we may see more of the domestic students, they may not be coming back to campus, and then that means they're not going back and forth during winter break and spring break and that kind of thing. So, but I know, the university is really hopeful that they can move with a format that will be allowable with the appropriate social distancing. And so, students really want to have that campus experience. I have 2 college students, and they were both thankful that they could, they both go to U of O. They're thankful they could stay in Eugene and continue on with their classes, even if they were online. But I think most students want to be able to get back to being on campus.
Yeah, I think the international students, they do create a little bit of inbound visiting family come in to see those international students, and we all know, as we observe some of our international students and what they're driving around town, that our auto dealers care a lot about the return of international students. So it is an interesting and a broader economic impact than just hospitality in terms of that component, because you have a housing market, and you just have a lot of implications. And then of course they are the highest tuition students for the university, and so they're critical from that component too. So let's just fingers crossed, vaccine, regrowth in the international students, and that helps all sectors, including travel and tourism.
Yeah. I'm trying to see if there's any other, I don't think I see any other questions. I'll make sure I don't miss it. Andy's been awesome. Thank you, Andy, from Kari's team. He's been putting definitions and links and whatnot in the webinar chat. So if you guys want some of those. So someone talked a little bit about the Love Lane campaign, Kari, and we're excited to partner with Travel Lane County and the Springfield Chamber, hopefully in the next couple of days, rolling out sort of an expansion of that campaign. When our chamber did our membership survey a couple weeks back, one of the number one things that folks listed or mentioned as their biggest concern was consumer confidence. And once we are able to reopen, and I think it's applicable to tourism and travel and just, general visiting of our businesses, that people are going to feel comfortable going back out, whether we can or not. If people don't feel comfortable, then we're not going to get our economy back going again. So in partnership with Traveling County and the city of Springfield, Springfield Chamber, we're rolling out a business pledge and a consumer pledge to safety and to, just committing to make sure that their staff and their customers are safe. And so we've heard a lot from consumers that they want to know which businesses are, kind of taking this as seriously as they can, and they want to go out and frequent those businesses and provide them business and thank them for doing so. So we're excited to kind of roll that out in the next couple of days, and we hope that folks will sign on to those pledges and we can start promoting those companies. But Kari, why don't you talk a little bit more about the Love Lane campaign and kind of how that came to be and why it started?
Well, and it really was, as we were all in a holding pattern and trying to just provide, really, it was a resident focused campaign. Most of our work is really to a visitor audience. Most of our work, people who live here never even see it because it's out in the marketplace beyond the borders of Lane County, trying to get people to come into Lane County. And this was content that was created for the people who live here, who were feeling isolated in our homes and not able to be out and recreate, and just to build that strong sense of connection. As we got into phase one, and our restaurants have just been champions, they've tried to do workarounds in every which way to help people, curbside pickups and these kinds of things. And we started to get a sense that the stress that people have been carrying around was kind of oozing out a little bit as they started to come back into businesses, places of business, and they were maybe finding some inconsistencies from one business to another, and they were expressing their dismay with frontline workers who are doing their very best to follow protocols and guidelines. And so it morphed into this Instilling Confidence series, the respect and patience and appreciation content that we've all been talking to residents about. And we're all in this together. Businesses are trying to work their way out of it in an appropriate way, and we as consumers are trying to do the same. And so I really appreciate your work and the work of your team, Brittany, on this pledge series. We're really wanting people to try and assume their best behavior. It is really important that businesses recognize that as their customers are coming into their doors, they have also been in the doors of other businesses, and they are looking for consistency and a sense that the business is taking their health seriously.
Yeah.
So the governor's issuance of these protocols and guidelines, they're burdensome, but they have a purpose. And in the consumer's mind now, they are equated with risk mitigation. Whether it is risk mitigation or it isn't risk mitigation, doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
In terms of how the consumer is perceiving the business's adherence to the protocols. So it's really important that businesses try and comply with the guidelines, have their employees in masks, and instill a sense of confidence in customers. If we want customers to come back into our doors, we have to make them feel safe.
Yeah.
And really mitigate risk for them as much as we possibly can, as well as for our own employees and so on. So
yeah, I think that the other component of that, which we're kind of rolling out with this, is the consumer pledge. And as consumers, being kind and trying to be thoughtful and respectful, and just giving some grace to folks. I have the honor of talking to hundreds of business leaders all throughout the days and weeks, and folks are trying really, really hard. It's just a lot for them to navigate all at once, and changing your operations and retraining staff that you probably had to lay off at some point, and getting everybody back on the same page with what we had a day's notice before, announcing when we were going to reopen. And so just giving folks some grace and trying to really embrace kindness in this time. And if they see something that's wrong, that doesn't mean don't call it out, but maybe do so in a way that's respectful and encouraging to the businesses versus kind of putting them on blast on social media. And so we're kind of excited to pair those two things together, and we want to do what we can to help these businesses get back to where they were at. John Borofsky asks, what do you think we need to do to advocate in Salem to keep these sectors alive? So whether it's hospitality, tourism, but then also air travel, is there any Is there any advocacy that we can be doing?
Yes, and it's great that John asked that question. He serves on the board of the Oregon Restaurant and Lodging Association, and Orla has done a phenomenal job of providing very respectful feedback to the governor's office on guidelines. And I do think that when the governor made her announcement opening phase 1 and sort of proclaimed cancel everything through September, that I think there was a lot of feedback given from a lot of different parts of the state around these very legitimate concerns about mass gatherings. Mass meaning for the governor, mass was a small mass. We're talking 25 people is a pretty small mass, but we have to find protocols. It's just critical, not only for the economy, we're all economic development organizations in a sense. So from an economic perspective, it's critical, but for our culture, our ability as humans to connect through things that are meaningful to us, for our health, it's critical that we find ways for people to come together again. And I do think the governor's office has gotten a lot of input, and I think it's been respectful, and I'm really hopeful that there's really earnest work underway. I'm hearing a lot around different kinds of mass gatherings and protocols, and people really trying to put their thinking caps on as to how to overcome those barriers.
Yeah, and I would say just from the airport standpoint, we know the airport itself will be fiscally okay in the short term, so in the next 18 months. It's really, again, our concession partners, the businesses that we rely on to provide services to our customers. They're the ones, they can tap into the Small Business Administration loans or the PPP loans. And some of them come with some grants if they retain a certain percentage of their employees. But even then, if you look long term, how many businesses are going to be able to survive with that level of loan now repayment that they need to pay on top of still trying to recover their business? So I think that's maybe where the state legislature could provide some relief.
Yeah, I think one of the other pieces that the chamber is tracking on and really trying to weigh in heavily at the state level and at the federal level are the liability issues. With this crisis, the unintended consequences that come along with implementing all of these additional health regulations is some pretty serious liability that businesses are going to have without any kind of direction. We didn't have these things put in place before, so there were no rules around it. So we've been tracking really closely some of the liability concerns that our legal community is surfacing around businesses having to do things, and what if someone gets sick at their business, and so on and so forth. So that's a component that I would really encourage folks to track. The goal is not to remove any kind of liability and make businesses sort of a free-for-all and not have to have them protect their employees. By no means is that what the goal is. But I do think we have to figure out a way to both protect employees and consumers and protect businesses from this, what could be a burden that they can't bear given the economic crisis that are already in. So that's something that we're tracking closely, and folks can follow along on our communications that we send out regularly for that. Well, we're coming here to the end. I thought I would just give each of you kind of a couple minutes if you have any final thoughts or comments. Somebody did ask, is there any way we can help, help the tourism industry? I'm thinking in my head, I need a staycation at one of these local hotels.
Exactly.
Get a different change of scenery from my house.
As we come into phase 2, that's exactly what people can do. So phase 2 means that you can travel more than 50 miles from home and still be in the governor's good graces. And we are hoping that people make their first forays somewhat close to home and help our nearby economies and our neighbors in Lane County by doing maybe taking a little trip close to home that you've never done before. Go to Oak Ridge, go down to Cottage Grove, go over to Florence instead of foraying further up the coast, and and patronize restaurants and hotels that are within Lane County as your first stop before you go farther afield. And with the counties, the variance in counties, then you know you're safe if you're close to home.
Yeah.
Invite friends to come and see you, but put them in a hotel instead of putting them up at home. That's always
better
very well
anyway.
received by our industry.
Yeah, my husband and I have had wonderful staycations at the Graduate and at the Fifth here in town sometimes, and at even hotels. I mean, sometimes it's just fun to give yourself a change of scenery, even if you're not traveling to the coast. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, that's absolutely, I think, supporting our local businesses. And when people, you know, either are ready to travel by air or have family or friends that you want to have come here because we are less populated, and maybe it'd be nice for somebody to kind of get out of an area that's more populated right now, to be mindful about supporting your local airport. You know, we've got things in place that are going to be good for everyone as far as just health concerns. You're not going to have to drive all the way up to that other very nice airport up the road. So just be mindful about supporting local businesses, including your local airport right now.
Yeah, I you know, this is a topic for another day, but I, you know, in this role, getting to know a lot more about the airport and the economics of the local airport, and just some of the data that Catherine has to show, you know, the average travel out of Eugene versus Portland is the difference is not enough to justify driving up to Portland for me anymore. And the experience at the local airport, I feel like I'm like a fangirl of our local airport. I can't imagine traveling from anywhere else now. So I think you're right. Once we're able to do that, trying to stay local and find a flight out of Eugene that we can help support the local airport that way too. Yeah.
Thanks for the opportunity, Brittany. Thanks for inviting us. Really
Yeah,
appreciate
thank you
it.
both. Yeah, we're excited. Like I said, keep an eye out for the Love Lane and Love Lane Biz campaigns and pledges that we'll be pushing out in the next couple of days. And as you feel safe, obviously we want people to use their own judgment and level of comfort, but go out and grab a meal on a patio somewhere at one of our restaurants. We're excited to be doing that more. So I appreciate you both.
Thanks, Brittany. We really appreciate your work around this as well. So yeah, awesome job.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.
Thanks.